So beautiful. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
And again, and Mark, everybody who. Oh, let's just take a breath. Okay, it's just right inside ourselves, doesn't it?
Sounds like chimes this morning.
It did. We're going to talk about tongues this morning. Well, whether we all know it or not, we are participating in a massive, probably the greatest evolutionary shift that has ever taken place on our planet as a corporate body of humanity. And we are really pioneering a new way of living in this reality. We're removing the illusions and the veils that have really kept us, from being our true selves, which are multidimensional. And that's what I want to talk about today. How many of you truly believe that you're multidimensional? I want to see. How many of you really believe, and how many of you had multidimensional experiences? So you really know that you're multidimensional. And if we are multidimensional, why is it so important at this time to get in contact and really connect with that multidimensionality? Not only for you, but why is it important for the planet that you understand and believe that you're multidimensional? First of all, being multidimensional means that you can travel in your mind between and have conscious visualizations and perceptions of other dimensions. So how many of us are doing that all the time? And I'm going to kind of bring that to your attention today. And we're going to talk about how you do that. And how we are really being supported in this moment, on this planet, to really get back in touch with our multidimensionality and really be able to travel between all of these dimensions. And the ancients and science now believes that human potential is not confined. I just read this morning. It's not confined to the three-dimensional world. And how many of us feel like we have been defined and confined by what our five senses tell us? And there's so many more senses. Really, the human body is a sensory organ totally. And there's so many more senses than those five senses that we really judge reality from. And what I want to do this morning is just, maybe you know about this, maybe you've even practiced this and had experiences, but I believe when we talk about it and become more aware of it, it becomes our reality. Doing things over and over again, even saying things that are repetitious, are good for us because it continues to click and bring those lights that come alive within us. So the new science is about transcending time and space. What's Miles been talking about? His whole studies have been talking about timelessness, transcending time. So what our multidimensionality is really helping us do is transcend time and space. And the ancients knew. And there's so many stories when you get online, and which you can do in a moment, and get online and see these stories of people that have experienced much multidimensionality phenomena. In other words, they have they have accessed higher spiritual dimensions and brought back information to this realm. Now, how many of us have done that? I know that happened in my life, and I'm going to give you some examples. But it's when we can totally go above this three-dimensional and access those fourth and fifth dimensional realms. And I believe they're open to us right now that we can do that and bring it back to this three-dimensional realm. And many times it's world-changing when that happens. And I'm going to talk about people that have changed the world by what they have brought back into this realm. Think of Mozart, when he gets the whole symphony at once and brings it back, that frequency back into this realm. And we're going to talk about many other people too. So the most incredible journey, now listen to this, I want you to hear this. The most incredible journey you will ever take is into the realms of the human mind. That's where the multidimensional, that's where we touch it. How many of you have taken journeys in your mind and touched other realms and had experiences? I saw my son being like a light beamed into his baby body inside of my room. I saw that. I could see how that light just, sparked him alive. And I've had so many other experiences, and I want us to think about the experiences that we've had today. Told you that experience when I walked into Staples and that 1-cent paper, and then I went to the back and came back and it was gone. And they said that they had taken that sign down before the store opened. And I was with a friend, so I knew I had stepped out of time, stepped into another dimension. And I think we're all experiencing that so much more. That's why I want to talk about it this morning. So when we learn how to access our own multidimensionality, we mentally access time, space, and other time-space realities. We get information that we can bring back here. Why do you think, I was thinking about this morning, meditation has come to the Western world? Why do you think yoga has come to the Western world? Because it's a timing, it's a synchronistic timing that opens up the portals of our mind. Yoga is an energetic, stretching exercise that opens up all of the energy centers of our body. And then when we do Shavasana at the end, and we go into that deep rest, we can almost access, and I have accessed those multidimensional realms just by opening the energy centers of our body. See, we think these are exercises and things. The Tai Chi that Kurt does, that's exactly what it does. I'm sure it opens the energy centers that we have access to these higher dimensional realms. We're created for that. It's our innate ability to do that. But we've forgotten all about it. We've forgotten it, and we haven't remembered who we really are. So here's a quote from an author, this Alice Bryant, that I was reading. She did an experiment and interviewed all of these people that were having multidimensional experiences. And this is what she says. The implications of multidimensional experiences for mankind is staggering. What does that mean? It means it would change our world when we tap into who we really are. When we really can begin experiencing these multidimensional experiences and bringing that multidimensional inspiration and information into this world, it's going to change everything. So she said it's staggering. Dimensional experiences for mankind is staggering. For their mind journeys allow remarkable amounts of different advanced technology brought to this three-dimensional world. What if you could bring the technology of something so simple to clean the waters of our oceans? It's there. Everything is in that realm. Every piece of information we want, and that realm is really inside of us. We're tapped into the Akashic Records. We're like a computer that's been programmed to do our part in this realm. But we are tapped into the mother computer, and we have all that information. So what if we could begin to tap into those realms and bring that information back in to this three-dimensional realm? It's going to change our world. These kids that are coming in are already programmed to tap in and bring so much of this information in. We see how they can do technology. My little grandson, my little granddaughter that's 4 years old can do all of these things on her computer that I can't do, on her phone, that I don't even know how to do. They're baking cakes and putting faces on you and all kinds of things. Because they're wired differently. They're coming in, but we have it too. They're also able to assess information through their own DNA, and I talked about that last week, how we really are in a time we need to be activating those codons. And somebody was asking me what a codon is. It's the parts of our DNA, and only 20, we have 64, but only 20 of our codons are turned on. That means we have phenomenal power that we have not tapped into. So if we put light into our DNA and envision those codons turning on, we have the power to do that. We are just learning all of these things that are going to change the way we look at life. So let me define this multidimensionality, or it's also called hyperspace. It's the space, or the dimensions beyond time and space, and the reality known as the three-dimensional world. So what it is, it's tapping into a dimension that has nothing to do with the third dimensional world. And I love what Miles said in one of his classes. He said, in 7 to 10 years, you're not going to recognize the world. It's not even going to be similar to what you think it is today. Now, we can't fathom that. We like a little change in our life, don't we? But we like to stay comfortable. I've always said this, and I'll say it again. We all want change. I'll say, how many want change? Everybody raise their hand, but they don't want anything different. Not in their life, not in their house, not in their routine, not in anything. They don't want anything different. And sometimes I think our soul calls for those big changes and just takes us and gives us a kick to get us out of the places that we refuse to get out of so many times. And I know that's happened to me. So anyway, just sharing that with you. So it's beyond this hyperspace, this multidimensionality is beyond this three-dimensional world. And where we define it by height, width, depth of space, we define what we see. If I define what I'm seeing right now, it's from width and depth and all of that. But there's something beyond what I'm seeing. Right now, in this room, there's TV frequencies and radio frequencies that are going right through us right now. We could have a football game going on television right now. I mean, I could duck and the football could be going right there, right now. But we don't see them because we're not tuned in. And that's where we are right now. The radio receiver is being changed right now, that we can tune in to these multi-dimensional dimensions that are way beyond the three-dimensional world. So it's referred to as the subspace or the multi-dimensionality that's around us right now. What a picture of that. It says everything in the physical realm is such a picture of the spiritual. To know that there's radio waves. If we had a radio right here and we turned it on, we could tune into stations. Some of them would be staticky. Some of them would be very clear, and that's what we're trying to do on our station right now. We're trying to clear the static, all the things that pressure us into this world, the veils that have kept us separated, that we can have that clear audio frequency of our multidimensionality, and that's really where we're going. So today there's the physics that has clearly defined hyperspace, and it introduces the existence of wormholes. How many of us have heard of wormholes? Or the dark hole, that they believe if they can go through the dark hole that they're going to access other universes. And wormholes, they think where the planets are being born, and all of these things are tunnels between dimensions to alternate universes. How big is that? You know, we look at our little problems here, and we look at them from these three-dimensional, precepts and concepts, instead of really tapping into that multidimensionality and begin to see them from higher dimensions. And I think the things that we go through, just like a diamond, that coal that presses on a diamond, I think the things that we're going to are really pressing us to begin to see things through the veil and from a higher dimension. So down through history, we've had examples of people who have developed these abilities to access higher dimensions. And they've been called prophets, seers, diviners, psychic. They've been called all of these names, but what they are is forerunners for you and I, because we are all psychic. Everything of people like H.G. Wells or Jules Verne, they wrote those books so many years ago, and a lot of those inventions were way before their time, and then they became into being after they wrote those books. What did they tap into? How about Mozart, who tapped in, like I said, to a whole symphony? He didn't just get lines. He got the whole symphony just dropped in there. What science is now saying is that these people were forerunners of the evolutionary path of all humanity. All the things they did, you can do too. And the reason we're talking about it is because we're opening up those possibilities with our mind to go deeper and to talk about it. And they represent a new evolutionary development of the human species. In other words, they are opening portals for quantum leaps for you and I. I've talked about this. I think this is such an example as the 4-minute mile. Before that, one guy broke through the 4-minute mile, to the mile in 4 minutes. Other people couldn't do it. But once he opened that portal and ran, people are doing it in half the time now. It's like there's something that we're doing for humanity. We're opening those portals. When we go deeper, we're doing it for all humanity. And we're changing our planet as we do it. So the most famous multidimensional person in the 21st century was Albert Einstein. And you know what he was called? From all his people, he was called deranged when he started bringing all this stuff through. He said he would go up into the other dimensions and bring down the whole theory of physics and bring down all of these things and be able to interpret it. This is another challenge. Many times when we have these multidimensional experiences, it's hard to interpret them into words because there's so much feeling and so much, it's just a different way of receiving information, so it's hard. But he had the ability not only to receive this information, but then transform it into information that could be used in the three-dimensional world. So we don't have to be all spirit to do this. This is still within our bodies that we have the capabilities to do that. So here's a quote from a multidimensional person, and this is what it said: "The message I relate to was given to me these impulses that are difficult to perceive as our current condition and language interferes with their meaning. As I visualized the need for a new energy system, it was shown to me visually, then it was interpreted poetically, and a name in linear fashion to integrate it in the third dimension was given." So what they're saying here is, when he began to receive these impulses that are different than words, he was also given the ability to interpret it He was given visually, poetically, and then given the ability to interpret it and bring it back into this three-dimensional world. So when we understand the power, somebody was saying this scripture the other day, and this is a scripture that always, so Jesus said, the things I'll do, you'll do also, and greater things will you do. And when I was in the church, I always said, what are the greater things? Everybody's still getting sick, they're weak, they're poor. Where are the greater things? But our mind couldn't even wrap around those greater things at that time. Those greater things are being multidimensional. Those greater things are healing ourselves. Those greater things are changing our thoughts and changing our world. I mean, the greater things are so much bigger than having money and having a house and getting a red, Corvette. Those things are the things that are really fading as we pick up the tools that are going to change our world. So people who have accessed these multidimensionals know, they see, they feel, they experience dimensions very differently than you do in the third dimensional world. To receive concepts in the form of universal communication. So we see visions. And I'm going to share a few things that happened to me. One of the first things that happened to me, and I was still in religion, I've told this story many times, but maybe somebody hasn't heard it. I was sitting in the couch in the middle of the night with all my books parked around me. Study, which I did a lot of times. I get up at 3 in the morning and study for hours. I still get up and do my things in the middle of the night. For me, when the consciousness is quieter, I can hear, and it's just easier for the flow. But anyway, in the side of the room, I saw these lips. And I thought, I can remember thinking to myself, this is crazy. I'm probably crazy like my family believes things. And then these lips came towards me, and they opened their mouth and breathed on me. And that's when I started speaking. It was some kind of initiation. So it was a vision that I had of lips, but it took many years, like 20 years, before I fully understood that it was initiation. Because when I began to study the Egyptian mysteries, one of the things they did was breathe on the initiates, to breathe that, new life into the initiates. And Jesus, in the New Testament, breathed 3 times on his disciples. So anyway, that was an example that I had. Symbols. Sometimes we get symbols. After a friend of mine died, I was asked to do the funeral, couldn't do it, so I wrote a eulogy for him. He was a fella, his name was Floyd, and he helped me come out of religion and really expand my horizons. And so the day that he died, when I was asked to do, the funeral, I was sitting at my desk typing, and a little red bird, I had a feeder right outside my window, and this little red bird landed. And next to the red bird, which was the male bird, was a little female bird. And the red bird, the male bird it looked like he was kissing the female bird, but what he was doing was giving that female bird a seed. And that symbol told me that Floyd would be seeding me from behind the veil. And now every time I see a rainbow, everywhere I moved or go, I will always see that cardinal. And my grandkids, when a cardinal comes to school, they say, yeah, Floyd was at school today. Anyway, so that was one of the things. And then colors. Colors can bring us messages. When I was getting things on the beach and I got those little pink sandals, it was like walking in the shoes of a child with love. Numbers. I really awakened through the encoded numbers of 3 and 7 in the Bible. These things trigger something in us that makes us begin to study in a certain way, that begins to open us up to higher dimensional knowledge when we do it. And Pam, with her music, we needed new music for the center, and all of a sudden the songs she just opened that channel and the songs began to come through her. So we are in the process of understanding our multidimensionality in a more expanded way. There's more. We never make it. You're never going to make it. There's not a destination here. It's just that continual expand. Look at the universe. The universe continues to go in and expand, contract and go in, and that's really the story of our life too. So we're in the process of understanding that. And as we understand we have access to these other dimensions, we can begin to nurture that and cultivate it within ourselves. And that's how we're really going to bring in the new earth, is by these ideas, not from a 3. What did Einstein say? You can't solve the problem with the same mindset that you created it with. So what kind of mindset did we create? A 3-dimensional mindset that could only see how it feels and tastes and all of that and hears. But how we're going to solve it is by tapping into our multidimensionality and bringing those answers from that dimension back into this realm. It's going to change everything. But what we have to be is open. Because the way you think now, what you believe today, it could change radically in 2 weeks, in 3 months, in 1 year. Somebody asked me what I believed 1 year ago, it would be totally different than what I believe today. You are evolving. We can't park on any viewpoint. You have to be open to change. I mean, I know this year many of us have been shaken loose from comfort zones, have been shaken loose from, you know, where it feels comfortable, where we can flow, and we've had to create brand new things, and it's going to be more and more in the future. You know, so anyway, I'm just saying that we're cultivating this new world. Think of the Michelangelo, Da Vinci, Albert Einstein, Tesla. All of these were considered geniuses that changed the world. How about Aristotle? You know, Socrates. I mean, these guys were guys that knew, they all went to the mystery school too. All of the Greek philosophers went to the Egyptian mystery schools, brought the mystery schools back to Greece, changed the name of all the players, and made it Greek. But they all stem back really to the Emerald Tablets. They all stem back way before Egypt, when it was a land of Chem. But anyway, so think of those men. They all accessed information outside this known realm and brought it back. Our challenge, and I said about multidimensionality, is the difficulty, how we can verbalize it. How many of you had experiences you just can't verbalize? I mean, like, I can tell you about those lips, but I can't totally verbalize how it felt to see a pair of big, they weren't little lips, they were these big lips in the corner of the room, and then they started coming towards me. And I was thinking, you know, I can't explain how that felt. And how inside, when it came right in front of me, and the mouth opened and blew on me. I can't tell you how that felt. I'm trying, and then I'm interpreting back. It took me 20 years to understand that it was really an initiation that was taking me to a higher consciousness, that was a stepping stone. And think back in your life. You've had many initiations that have taken you to another realm of understanding. So anyway, so we can learn to expand our concepts beyond this three-dimensional realm. We're being stretched. And to integrate this information into this realm. That's what you are. You know, I'll never forget when I started having New Age friends. You know, when I was in churches, how many of you went to churches? How many of you went to Pentecostal churches? And you know how people prophesized over you. Well, if you didn't, if it was just Main Street, but they would prophesize over you. And what would happen? They'd lay hands on you, and then the Spirit would stir them up, and they'd begin telling you what your future was going to bring and all that. So then I get into, so we had prophecy in the church. So I get into New Age, and they're called channels. They begin to channel and telling you what's going to happen. But the church and the New Age are at odds with each other, and we can't be a channel. You know, in the church, we have to be a prophet. So what I learned is it's all the same. And what we're learning is really our multidimensionality to tap into those things, whether they're called prophets or channels. But anyway, another thing I wanted to say that's happening to people is they're being contacted by extraterrestrials or higher dimensional spirits. And it may sound weird. How many of it sounds weird? And what David Wilcox said in his book was that many of us are being contacted, but we're being contacted in our imagination first, so we won't be scared. Because when they come to us in our imagination, we're able to process it more than coming and standing in front of us or something like that. We begin to hear these voices. And how many of us have opened a channel for that? That we can really begin, and we can communicate. You know, we can really begin to communicate with these extraterrestrial, whatever they are. You know, we're defining it. We say gods or angels or extraterrestrials, but they're all higher dimensional spirits that really we can contact. How many of us does this sound weird? What if I told you I got a message from ET? What if I told you that it came in my mind? Would you think, ooh, or would you think there's a possibility that could be true? I know you do, Kat. That's why we got to bring you back to Earth all the time. You're out there with them. Bringing that information to us. Many of us were born multidimensional, but then others of us lived kind of an ordinary life. We had little things we knew we were thinking about, but something happened. We had an experience that whisked us away into this multidimensionality, and that's what happened to me. I just began to have these experiences that just whisked me away, and I could see that there was so much more than what I was looking at with my eyes. And it means that life will never be the same again for any of us. You know, one of the things I saw in the Bible, which is such a typology, with the wise men came and they saw the Christ. And they had a dream, and it said, you can't go back the way you came. None of us can go back the way we came. You've come too far. The only thing you can do is continue to press forward into your multidimensionality and keep walking this path. So anyway, so it's never going to be the same. And you know, there's so much more than this 3D world, and what also can cause a shift between dimensions is something, a stimuli sometime. And I was saying that what happened for me, sometimes it's a sound or a word. And the tones this morning, Sharon's tones this morning, that's one of the things. I'm going to cut this to an end, and I'm going to talk more about next week how we get into our multidimensionality, how to really tap into it. But one of the things is tones. You know, they can trigger that. I was at Diva Pramal one time, and she was doing this chanting, and I thought, you know, chanting, it just goes on and on. It was one of my first experiences with chanting. But as I closed my eyes and just allowed those vibrations to wash over me, I became peace. I didn't experience peace. And you can't bring the translation of that back into words. But all of a sudden, I just knew I was peace. And it was through that chanting, that Sanskrit, those tones that really brought me into that. So also these things can be guides for us. The harmonic resonance can come from many things: a sound, a word, a flash of light, a sentence, or even an event. And for me, it was one sentence in the Bible that totally awakened me. It said that you will go up on the mountain for 3 days and 3 nights, and the destroyer will follow you, and when you come down, there was no destroyer. And I said, what happens on the 3rd and 7th day that we don't have somebody after us? And I started a search just from that one scripture. It was a light that went on in my head, which can happen to you and probably has happened to you. And for a year I searched those scriptures and found out we are living in the 3rd and 7th day. We are living in the time when all the miracles in the Bible took place, and they would say, and it was the 3rd day. And they went to the marriage of Cana, or it was the 7th day, and they went up onto the Mount of Transfiguration. Why would they tell us that? Because it has an encoded message for us. And everything that happened on that 3rd day, 7th day was miraculous healing of consciousness and humanity. So I just want to say we are in one of the most miraculous times. And when I want you to look at your life right now, just think for a moment. See and recognize the times you've shifted between dimensions. Think about a time. Is there any time anybody would like to share something in here that they have shifted between dimensions? Well, you have. I know all of you have. And you can nurture that. When you feel it coming, nurture that. Like I told the story of my time warp. I've told the story of the lift. I've told the story of standing outside my body and seeing the book flip. When we nurture those things and say, yes, that was real in my life. This wasn't some corny, crack thing that happened to me, but this was something that changed my life. Those lips changed my life. I began to speak. I mean, it was a gift that was endowed. It happened to Pam in my laundry room. She thought Mark was behind her, and she felt a whisk through her ears and dropped to her knees. And that's when she began writing the music. So those are the things that really take us into those dimensions. Larry, you want to share something?
As far as transformation is concerned, I worked for many years in hospice, as many of you know. And I got into after being there for a period of time, over and over again it would happen that when I would meet a new patient, and I would walk in the room to see that patient, I couldn't understand it, because when they were looking at me, it was like they were looking at a shell 6 or 8 inches away from my body. And I really could not understand that. But every time that would happen, I would be with that patient when they died. So in understanding later, I think I was transitioning into a totally loving spirit, going in to meet that person, and that person, I could see in their face that they were not seeing me, they were seeing something else. But they were totally at peace and comfort with me. And I never said anything while I was there, that would happen over and over and over again, that just in a flash I would be a different being. And that began to happen.
You know, I think that happened to us when we had a prison ministry. I can remember standing in front of big, tall guys, you know, we would be praying for them, and feeling just like a conduit of love. You had no judgment at all, whether they were right or wrong, what they believed, but I could just feel being taken over, you know, by that conduit of love. And so we all do experience things like that. And what I want us to really see today is that we get what we focus on. So what I want to do is put our focus on something higher, that we can transcend this three-dimensional world, get solutions for ourselves. You know, go up into those Akashic records and bring down information. Go up into those dimensional realms and really connect for answers in our own life. We are the solution sitting in chairs this morning to the world. You are. You're the ones all of this planet has been waiting for. All of creation, the Bible says it this way, all of creation is groaning through earthquakes, through tsunamis, through the destruction of the animals, through the fire of the forest. Through all of these things, the earth is groaning for the manifestation of divinity on this planet, for the sons of God to stand up and say it, we are divine. We have the power. How did Jesus feed the 5,000? He reached into that dimension of abundance and pulled it down and multiplied those fish and those breads. Have you ever had a dinner and you don't think you have enough? So many of our potlucks are that, like, you know, we see just a little bit on the table and pretty soon everybody's eating and there's more than enough left over. That's the realm we're connecting to. You get what you focus on. I love Miles's two things. You get what you focus on, and like connects with like. So what do we want to focus on? That we are dimensional beings that have the ability to pull the answers down and change the world. And so it is. So it is. Oh. Now, is there anybody else? Sandy, you want to share something?
I do. A few years ago, Sharon Kistler and Joan McGarry were doing some classes, and we had that